Welcome to this Food Innovation Talk. My name is Thomas Jacobsen and I'll be your host for this episode. Today we will bring you insights from two experts from Aarhus University who will talk about the perception of the food that we eat. As part of this talk, we'll do a small experiment and we'll guide you through that later on, where you'll be able to test how your senses are affected by a piece of chocolate. This episode is presented in collaboration with Food Supply. If you have any questions during this food innovation talk, you can send them to us directly by filling in the form right next to the video. Now, I'm very glad to introduce Line and Janice, and I would like to just ask if you can present yourself.
Yes. Well, hi, and first of all, thank you for inviting us to do this talk. We've looked very much forward to it. As you said, I'm Line, this is Janice, and we're both from Aarhus University Department of Food and the science team Food Quality Perception and Society. And what we basically do, in very short words, is that we work on understanding food quality and perception through many different ways. It's a very multidisciplinary team we have.
Yes, especially as you'll see later. So, Line, why don't you introduce yourself and your background first?
Yeah. I work as a postdoc, and I have a PhD within sensory and consumer science and a master in food science and technology. In what I work with and what I think sensory and consumer scientists traditionally work with is I work with an offset within the food. That means that, for instance, I work on these issues such as we consume too much sugar. How can we reduce sugar, for instance, in beverages? There might be too much fat in sausages. How can we reduce fat in sausages and maybe make them even more healthy with fibers and stuff? How do we work and overcome reducing salt in a cheese without compromising the quality of the cheese? So those are kind of some of the products that it's actually just examples of what we can work with. We can also work with manipulating different factors of the actual product. We can work with manipulating the color of the product, the aroma of the product, and the viscosity, among others, of the product. So we also work in sensory and consumer science on more overall concepts, for instance, such as complexity, as that has been found to have an effect on how we perceive and like food. Lastly, but not least, we also work with, of course, use humans. It's sensory and science, which is the science where we use the human senses to evaluate food. And we are interested in humans through a whole lifespan, so from toddlers all up to elderlies, even. Yeah. So over to you.
Yeah. So my name is Janice Wang. Like Line, I also work in the Food Quality Perception and Society group. I just got hired actually last August as an assistant professor. But unlike Line, my background is a little bit more unorthodox, you can say. So I was actually trained as a computer scientist. I have a background in technology and design. And then I went to do my PhD at Oxford University at the Cross-Modal Research Lab in experimental psychology. So we have the picture in the middle because I work on researching how the different senses are related to each other. So to be honest, my background had really not much to do with food because I was studying the human mind. And in the background here, I have some examples of how our senses can actually influence our eating experience. So, for example, in my PhD, I worked on how music and how sound can influence the way that we perceive flavors or tastes in the food and also how much we like the food. Besides that, my background also involved, for example, looking at how the shape of the food might influence and the shape of the packaging might influence your perception, or even the color of the packaging or the font of the packaging. and how the food is plated, whether it's plated in an artistic way or whether it's plated in an angular manner or round manner, all that can actually influence the perception of the food itself. or when it comes to the sense of touch, whether the cup, for example, is smooth or rough, that can influence your taste perception. And also, because I have the background in computer science and technology, I have tried to incorporate elements of technology into psychology and food science. So for example, on the top here, I have a picture of my studies with virtual reality, where we're really trying to use this idea of virtual reality to study basic psychological phenomenon. And here I have a picture where we actually incorporated technology into a drinking cup, so that when you're drinking a beverage, the cup starts showing different music as you're tasting to try and to change your taste experience. And actually, speaking of music and changing your taste experience, we would like to try something very new and very exciting, which is we will try to do a live study in this live broadcast. So I should say up front that we have no idea what is going to happen with the study, which makes it extra exciting.
We haven't tried it before.
So Thomas will be doing the study here live together with the audience, and after the study, we will show the results live. So everything is very exciting. We have asked you to prepare 2 pieces of dark chocolate before the study. So if you have the dark chocolate with you, please have them on hand now. So what we will do is we will ask you with your smartphones or your laptops to please go to www.menti.com and then use the code 788309. So it looks like this, and on the next page you will also see the code right here. And before we start the experiment, I will explain a little bit about the scale that we're using, because as Lena says, this is not the classic sensory science way of measuring taste perception, but I come from psychology, so I use a little bit of a different approach when asking questions. So let me explain what will happen here. So the question is, please rate the sweet-bitter balance of the chocolate. So we're not asking you to rate just how sweet is the chocolate or how bitter is the chocolate. What we're asking you to do is to think about the balance between these two tastes. So for example, if you think the chocolate is much more bitter than sweet, then please rate towards the left side of the scale. And if you think the chocolate is much more sweet than bitter, then please rate towards the right side of the scale. Now, how the experiment will work is that I will play 2 pieces of music that are both 40 seconds long. And what I want the audience and also Thomas to do is, while the music is playing, to put 1 piece of dark chocolate in your mouth. Try not to chew the chocolate, but let it melt in your mouth. And pay attention to both the taste of the chocolate and also the music at the same time. So I will first play music 1 for 40 seconds, and please eat the first piece of chocolate while the music's playing. And then afterwards, I will ask you all on your devices to rate the sweet and the bitter balance of chocolate 1. And then I will play music 2, and I will ask you to make the ratings for the second piece of chocolate. And then it will be the final dramatic moment when we reveal the results live and see what happens. So if everyone's ready, Thomas, are you ready?
I'm ready.
So can you please take a piece of dark chocolate?
Can I try to?
Yes, of course. We can all try this. And on the count of 3, I will start playing music number 1. So if everybody's ready, let's do this. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that was music 1. So if you can please make the rating here under chocolate with music 1. And once you make your rating, yes, Thomas, please make your rating.
I'm rating here.
Yes,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so now on the count of 3, I will play music 2. And please take a second piece of chocolate.
Yes. Thank you.
And when you start hearing the music, put the chocolate in your mouth and we'll repeat the same thing. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so now please make the rating for chocolate with music too. And once you've made that rating, please click the submit button on the bottom of the screen.
Very important.
I've done so.
Excellent. So before we go and reveal the live results,
Yeah.
Thomas, what was your impression
Yeah.
of the chocolate?
Without being any super taster or anything in that direction,
Yeah.
I had a clear experience that listening to the soundtrack. One, the first piece of music, the bitter notes, notes in the chocolates was a bit more clear by listening to the first one. And when you change music to soundtrack 2, I think there were a more clear taste of cacao. Cacao. And thereby also some kind of sweetness. So actually a quite different taste.
Okay.
I'm not sure I would call it sweeter, but I could taste the cacao.
Yeah. So you perceived them differently.
Yeah, I did so.
Yeah.
Okay. Even though you knew that the chocolate are actually the same.
Yeah.
So for example, if you talk about this scale here, you would think that the chocolate with music 2 would be more on the right side.
Yeah.
And that the chocolate with music 1 would be more on the left side.
That's how I voted.
Okay.
Interesting to see.
So, shall we check the live
Shall we check and
result?
see?
Yeah, this is very very, very exciting.
No.
Again, please, audience at home, note that this is the first time we're trying something like
So,
this.
before we can see anything, I will need to click show results.
Exactly.
Yes. You're
Over
almost
here.
there.
Yes. Are we ready?
Okay.
Here we have them.
Yeah, so like what Thomas said, you can see here that chocolate with music number 2 was significantly, well, it's much more to the right than chocolate with music number 1. So I should say something about the soundtracks that we used. So the first piece of soundtrack was much lower in pitch and it had a more dissonant harmony, whereas the second piece of music was higher in pitch and had a more consonant harmony. And research has shown that people tend to associate bitterness with low pitch and dissonant harmonies, and people tend to associate a higher pitch and consonant harmonies with sweetness. And I should give credit to my new PhD student, Sina Mathisen, for composing the 2 soundtracks. So, great. So it's very exciting that we actually had a nice response with our live online study.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Should I change back to the
yes,
presentation?
please.
Here we go.
Great. And I should just say that more and more our group is actually engaging with this kind of public data collection and citizen engagement, because I think, especially for food research, it's really important to not only do the research in the laboratory, but really to take it out in the real world with more ecologically valid settings. And because everyone eats, everyone cares about food, it's very, very important to involve as many people as possible in the research. So we hope this is only the start of many more future experiments and studies where we really try to engage the public in new ways. Okay.
Yeah. So in summary, what we've actually tried to show you here is that from a traditional, if you will, sensory and consumer scientist, we tend to study the product itself. Here it's exampled by 4 different colored drinks. Later in the presentation, these factors we will call intrinsic factors, so food itself factors.
Yeah. So, for instance, what I'm used to studying in psychology is I'm used to studying everything but the food, so to speak. So for example, here, all the drinks are the same, but the glasses are different. And I'm used to studying what's called extrinsic factors, which is everything except for the food itself. So for example, the shape or weight of the glasses here.
However, both you in front of your computer screen as well as us, we know that that's not real life. In real life, you cannot separate intrinsic and extrinsic factors. They all come together in the eating experience. And that is something that we are studying. Actually, this thing about working with either intrinsic or extrinsic factors is definitely not new. The new thing is trying to combine it. And we're now going to show some few results of 2 papers that we published on this.
Yeah.
So over to you, Janice.
Yeah, so the first study was called Sweeter Together, where we tried to evaluate the combined influence of both intrinsic and extrinsic factors on sweetness perception. So we had a setup at actually the food festival in Aarhus, where we had iPads for people to answer questions and also headphones, because what we were evaluating was the sweetness perception of an apple drink, where we varied 3 different factors. So in terms of the intrinsic factor, we had different levels of pomegranate aroma added to the product. And we used pomegranate because in a pre-test, we showed that pomegranate was associated with a sweet taste, even though adding a pomegranate aroma doesn't change the actual sugar level of the drink. But on top of that, we also varied some extrinsic factors. So for example, because people had iPads, they were able to view different colors on the iPad while they took the drink. And in addition, we gave them headphones so they could listen to different music. So we had 1 piece of sweet soundtrack and 1 piece of bitter soundtrack, very similar to what you just heard with the chocolate. And here's a very quick summary of the results that we found. And here you can see that we have varied by aroma, soundtrack, and color. So in terms of aroma, we found that having a medium level of added pomegranate aroma made the juice taste sweeter than having no added aroma. In the case of the soundtrack, we found a comparative difference where when people heard the bitter soundtrack while tasting the juice, that was rated as significantly less sweet compared to either having no music or having the sweet soundtrack. And finally, we looked at the effect of color, but in this case, we didn't see a significant difference between people seeing pink or yellow or no color on the screen. And in addition, and this is what I find quite exciting, is that if we look at the sweetness enhancement effect of soundtrack and aroma, or soundtrack combined with aroma, we actually see a greater combined sweetness enhancement effect when we combine the intrinsic cue and the extrinsic cue. And for us, this is really the exciting part, because we're showing that there might be an interaction between what's in the food and also what is outside the food. And now Lena will present study number 2.
Yeah. So this is a study that has the title See, Feel, Taste, the influence of receptacle color and weight on the evaluation of flavored carbonated beverages. And in this color, we once again varied both intrinsic and extrinsic factors. In terms of intrinsic factors, we worked with 3 different flavored Tourtel Twist. Tourtel Twist is a non-alcoholic beer beverage. We did it in collaboration with Carlsberg. Tourtel Twist is a Carlsberg product. And the 3 different aromas we used, or flavors we used, were raspberry, lemon, and grapefruit. These different products were then served in receptacles. 4 receptacles to be completely specific. We have a picture of the experimental design here. We had either black cups or red cups. But I said we had 4 cups, so or 4 containers. We had 1 red cup with no weight added and 1 with 20 grams added. And the way we added, this is a very practical note, but we added a washer in the bottom of 1 of the cups, added the other cup like this. So that was the the one with the weight. The one with no weight, we of course did the exact same, meaning we had 2 cups, but we just didn't add the washer, so it wasn't that easy to see what we actually did. So we did that for red cups and black cups. And what did we find? Well, the top bars over up here shows the differences for the flavor variants. And what you can see is for liking, the raspberry flavor was significantly more liked compared to the grapefruit and lemon. It was also the product that was rated significantly more sweet compared to the other products. Oppositely, the product that was perceived the most bitter was the grapefruit one, and that was perceived, and the lemon was perceived significantly more bitter than the raspberry one. This is actually very much in accordance to what we would expect. We would definitely expect that there would be differences between these 3 flavors, despite the fact that there was no differences in the sugar content of the product. Interesting though, as well, is we also saw a difference between the cup colors for carbonation. We would have wanted sweetness to also be affected. Unfortunately, that didn't happen in this study. But what we did find was if we served the product in a red cup, it was perceived more carbonated compared to if we served it in a black cup. Also, very interesting, and actually really adding up to this thing about how the intrinsic, extrinsic factors relate, which is what we we're very interested in. We see here that for the beverages, if you have a low level of bitterness, the weight of the cup actually affects the carbonation rating, because we can see that for the bitter products, a heavy cup will increase the level of carbonation significantly compared to a light cup. I don't know. Okay, so we're actually okay on time. So basically what we really wanted to say with this, of course, is we're very interested, as I already said, and as Jana said, about the different intrinsic and extrinsic factors and how they affect each other, because this actually has quite a lot of significance in terms of how we perform our studies in the future. Do we incorporate together, or do we do separate studies as is mostly done? The studies we've done here is actually done in connection with a project we have called InnoSweet. In InnoSweet, what we're working for is trying to find a way to maintain sweetness perception of sugar-reduced and or replaced beverages. And what Janice and I have been talking very much about today is actually represented by the pink and the blue head here. Perception, that's the sensory part, and psychology, the blue. But we also have in this project a strong element of looking at physiological measurements to figure out, okay, so when we've ingested these lovely products, what then happen in our body? Because it might be that we can trick the brain, but what about the body? I really should mention that our project, InnoSweet, is funded by the Innovation Fund Denmark, and we're quite a lot of collaboration partners here. From Aarhus University, we have a Department of Food, where we are sitting at the moment. We also have AU Health. Then we have University of Oxford with Charles Spence at Experimental Psychology. We have KU IFRO, so that is economy in the food sector from Copenhagen University. And last but definitely not least, we have a very good collaborators, that was it, from the industry, and that is Rynkeby, Carlsberg, and DuPont.
Yeah, so for me, this is a really exciting project because, for one, we are collaborating really across disciplines because, again, my background is really in computer science and psychology. And again, it's exciting to be collaborating between industry and academia. And also, even for within industry, I think it's very exciting because this kind of project implies that people from product development should really be working with people from marketing. And that's, I think, is also something new about breaking down boundaries.
Yeah. Thank you very much to both of you. Very interesting, and I'm sure that you could have talked for hours about this.
We could talk for days.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have received a question that I'd like to ask you, and I can just read it out loud.
Yeah.
Does the taste affect it? Does the taste affect it by the location where the consumer is? The same food, if he/she is in a cold area or in a warm area, will this affect the taste of the food?
A very good question.
Yeah.
And I guess the answer very quickly is yes.
Well, yes. But I think it has two factors because, for example, if you're in a cold or warm area, that could affect the temperature of the food itself, and that is really very much Lena's area because food temperature has been shown to influence the perception of taste intensity.
Yes.
And also, I think besides the temperature of the food itself, even if the temperature of the food is constant, just because the environment is different, I think that would also influence us as people. So, for example, it's been shown that different temperatures can make people feel differently, change people's mood. And once you start changing people's mood and emotion, that has a carryover effect on how you perceive tastes and flavors.
Yeah. Actually, it's this thing about food and how we perceive it. Everything can really affect it. You would be surprised of how little a difference would actually affect how you perceive the food you have on your plate.
Yeah, interesting. And for the audience, we will ask or answer the remaining of your questions directly to your email. And if you watching this later on and have questions, please send them to us and we will make sure that you'll get an answer personally. Once again, I will say thank you to both of you for the very inspiring presentation and the great experiment that succeeded.
Exactly.
Yes.
We're also very excited. Thank you.
Yes. And I think that we will keep the opportunity open for people to vote.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, that would be lovely. So if you didn't have time or if you didn't have chocolate on your hand, you can actually do the exact same thing once again and provide more results for us.
Yes.
Great. Super.
Thank you. And then all I have to say is thank you all for watching this episode of Food Innovation Talk. And to stay updated for future episodes, please sign up for our newsletter on Danish Food Cluster DK. Thank you.